Hello, hello, welcome. Good afternoon.
I'm like talking and can't.
So we've got a few more people joining. We'll give it a minute or so. Okay. For the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us. We are in Zoom room 9, and you are here for the implicit bias with a focus on racial equity training. So just make sure you're in the right place. We have Shelly Ashley, who's going to kind of lead the charge here, and she's brought a team with her. So I have went ahead and muted all of you, but we will be able to, I will let Shelly be the host, and she'll be able to unmute you for conversations, but feel free to utilize the chat box throughout as well. So ladies, Shelly, I'm going to go ahead and make you the host and hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Madison. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Like Madison said, this is our implicit bias with a focus on racial equity session. And we're glad that you chose to join us for today's session. You should have received some pre-work. Don't panic if you were not able to get the pre-work done. That's totally fine. You will hopefully be inspired after today's session to go ahead and do that work, and we're going to share some other resources as well. So you will get a list of those at the end in this session. Of course, will be shared with you. Today, it's my privilege to introduce two of my colleagues here from Goodwill in Central Indiana. Michelle White is our Director of Goodwill Ignite, and she started with the Excel Center, the first Excel Center here in Indianapolis, as a life coach, and has been with us pretty much since then. She had one little year where she went and went on a different path for a little while, but she made her way back here. And in her current role, she oversees a variety of grants and special programs, and she's really at the cutting edge and the leadership role in leading our initiative here at Goodwill of really making sure that we are a anti-racist organization. So we're really thankful to have her. Michelle has a bachelor's degree in psychology from St. Joe University and also a master's in counseling from Indiana Wesleyan University. And then our other facilitator today is Robin Coleman. Robin is a registered nurse with our Nurse Family Partnership. She's been a community health nurse, and she's participated in a minority nurse affinity group and also a minority professional affinity group. At Goodwill, she serves as the co-chair for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. She has a BSN from Marian University and a master's in public health from the University of South Carolina, Columbia. So we're really, really fortunate to have Michelle and Robin with us today to kind of lead us through this. And their hope for today is really that we'll all gain a better understanding of implicit bias, what it is, and really starting to think about strategies to unlearn and combat our own personal biases. So with that, I will turn it over to Robin and Michelle.
Thank you, Shelly, for the introduction, and hello to you all. As previously stated, I am Robin Coleman. I co-chair the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee at Goodwill Indy, and I am excited to talk to you about implicit bias and racial equity. So welcome to the webinar. We will jump right into the session by having you do a quick activity. Each of the next 4 slides has a question on it. Please read through the question quickly and make a decision. You will only have 5 seconds per slide. Michelle, next slide, please. So the purpose of that brief activity was to allow you to practically see how implicit bias plays out in everyday interactions. You make a decision with very limited information based on what you see or have previously heard, and you make this decision within seconds. Next, Michelle will go over our shared agreements with you.
Sorry, my mute button was hiding from me and I could not get it to come up. Yeah, as Shelly mentioned, I'm Michelle White, and I'm so happy to be here with you guys today. Here are some of our shared agreements for this session. If you guys could just take some time to go ahead and read through those on your own, we'll give you the next 30 seconds to read through those really quickly. And then we understand that implicit bias is definitely not only about race, but that's the conversation that we want to have today. And so we wanted to bring in these 4 agreements from conversations about courageous conversations about race. So if you guys could read through these agreements as well, and then we'll talk specifically about a couple of them once you finish reading through them. Okay, as I said, I wanted to specifically point out 2 of them in particular. Experience discomfort and expect and accept non-closure. So the experience discomfort one, this is a difficult topic to talk about, but we feel like it's necessary to be able for us to move forward. We have to have that conversation. Thinking and talking about racism is like a muscle. The more you practice and do it, the stronger it becomes. And sometimes it's painful, but always worth it in the long run. And you might experience some discomfort today, but we hope that you're growing through it. And then expect and accept non-closure. I know this is hard for a lot of educators, especially me. I am like let's just check the box and get this done. But anti-racism work is long and hard, and we're not going to be able to solve the problem today. But we do hope that we are taking a step forward by having this conversation. So we kind of have to be okay with just hanging out with uncertainty. Someone who wants to come in and move on to the goals. Robin?
Sorry about that. Had trouble unmuting the microphone. Okay, so our goals for today are to define implicit bias, have you reflect on your own personal biases, reflect on how it affects you in your interactions with your peers, those you serve, and others at home. And lastly, for you to strategize how to unlearn implicit bias. So, what is implicit bias? Okay, so your brain is noticing patterns and making generalizations all the time. This same thought process that makes people smart can also make them biased. This tendency for stereotype confirming thoughts to pass spontaneously through our minds is known as implicit bias. It sets people up to overgeneralize, sometimes leading to discrimination, even when people feel like they're being fair. Implicit bias exists when people unconsciously hold attitudes towards others and associate stereotypes with them. People's implicit bias may run counter to their conscious beliefs without their realizing it. Implicit bias is also known as unconscious bias or implicit social cognition. So again, it refers to the attitudes and the stereotypes that affect our understanding, our actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. They are subconscious. They are different from known biases that individuals may choose to conceal for the purposes of social and or political correctness. So this slide goes over more about implicit bias. But before we go through the slide, I want to just touch base. We had you go through take the implicit association test from Harvard University. Most measures in psychology are useful for predicting how groups will respond on average, not forecasting how particular individuals will behave. And what the implicit association test does very well is predict average outcomes across larger entities like schools. For example, schools with greater average implicit bias have larger racial disparities in the student achievement scores. And we all know how education is pivotal in determining one's physical, mental, and financial well-being. So we've heard about the classroom to prison pipeline, where the judicial or the prison institution take the scores of third grade children to determine how many prisons to build, as they expect those who do not perform well in the classroom to turn to a life of crime. So the correlations are important. The lives of students depend on them, and more specifically, as we're addressing racial equity, the lives of minority students or Black students depend on them. Educational gaps that are evident of implicit bias playing out in the classroom. So we'll go through more about the implicit bias. Implicit biases are pervasive. Everyone possesses them. It's subconscious, it's unconscious. So sometimes it's hard for people to admit that they have bias, but you can't get around it. It's pervasive. Everybody possesses them. And it's because your brain has to take shortcuts to come up with thoughts. We're inundated with information from everywhere all day long. And your brain has to create a schema to simplify the world and sort through all the data that we encounter. Implicit biases, we hold, do not necessarily align with our declared beliefs or even reflect the stances we would explicitly endorse. And this is why people have a hard time even talking about it or admitting that there are biases, because we know that a lot of times it doesn't align with our declared beliefs. We generally tend to hold implicit biases that favor our own in-group, though some research has shown that we can still hold implicit biases against our own in-group. Implicit biases are learned, and they can be seen in children as early as 3 years old. But most importantly, implicit biases are malleable, which means they can be unlearned. So I'll let Michelle take the next slide.
Perfect. Thanks, Robin. And as she said, that implicit bias can start at a very young age. So we're going to watch a short video that emphasizes that implicit bias does start at such a young age and the effects you can see on the children, especially the children of color that you'll see in the video. The doll test is a psychological experiment that was designed in the 40s in the US to test the degree of marginalization felt by African-American children caused by prejudice, discrimination, and racial segregation. The test was recreated with Italian children of color since there has been an increase in migration in Europe. So the good part about this video is it'll have subtitles. There will be some music, but mostly you'll be able to watch via the subtitles. Can you guys all see that? Yeah.
Quale bambola è? bambola è nera? Quale delle due è bella?
Questa.
Qual è quella bella? Qual è quella brutta? E qual è quella buona? Quale è cattiva? Quale è buona?
Lei.
Perché è buona?
Perché ha gli occhi celesti.
Quale è cattiva? Perché è cattiva?
Perché è tutto nero.
E qual è la bambola che ti somiglia di più? Quale bambola è nera?
Ti ho offeso. Tu. Perché mi hai chiamato nero? Mi offendi perché altri bambini mi hanno offeso con cattiveria.
No, io non ho usato le spalle.
Quello sto mi sta guardando storto.
We're debuting a really important 360 special report called
hold
Kids
on.
on Race. It's a hidden
Sorry.
picture. It's a project.
Sorry about that. Okay, so man, that's hard to even watch. But right now we're going to go into our breakout rooms to have a small group discussion. The first question will be about the video, our reaction to that video, and our emotional reaction to the video. But we're going to have 7 minutes to share just because we're running close to time. And we ask that you would just take a couple of seconds, introduce yourselves, answer the question, and then choose a spokesperson because we are going to ask you to come back and share out with the rest of the group when we get back together. And there's going to be 2 different discussion questions. So we're going to have the odd groups share, the even groups share first, and then the odd groups share second. So if you could remember the group number that you were, when the pop-up comes up, if you can remember your group number, we're going to call you out to share those when we come back from the group. So, oh, and if you're not familiar with breakout rooms, once we click breakout, you'll get a pop-up asking you to join the room. You just need to click join, and then it'll automatically bring you back into the main session. We should all be Zoom experts by now. So here is the first question. What was your emotional response to the video? That's a fairly straightforward question, but you will not be able to see that question once you get into your breakout room. So if you need to take a picture of it, feel free to do that. And then Shelly, we are ready to jump into our breakout rooms.
Oh, hang on a second. Sorry. There's a few more people that I need to get assigned. My apologies. Okay, we should be good. Bailey's not assigned. Bailey, are you assigned in Anwar? It looks like you should be assigned, but I want to make sure that you got the invitation.
Okay, Bailey's gone. Anwar? We can hear you talking, but barely. We can't understand you.
I'm sorry. I don't know why it's not letting me join.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Hang on a second. Yep, I can see that. I'm just going to try and move you to a different group and see if that will work.
Yep, that worked. Good job, Shelly.
Okay. Well, they're not perfectly, but I was trying to balance them out.
Shelly, can you push pause on the recording? Or no, can you guys let me know when they're back because I can't see anybody else. Shelly, you're muted. Okay, is everybody back? Shelly, Robin, are all my people back? I can't see everyone.
Not quite, Michelle.
Okay.
Give it 20 more seconds. They're coming back right now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, I'll tell you in just a second.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Michelle, everyone should be back now.
Okay, great. So we want to go ahead and hear from everyone, your emotional reaction to the video. I definitely had one from myself, but I don't necessarily need to share that. So if the leader or the spokesperson for group 2, we are going to give everyone about 1.5 minutes just because of time, and maybe a little less if you can. Share out just kind of like the main points or what your group shared together. So group 2, we might need to unmute you. Madison, I'm not sure how that works. Maybe put in the chat who you are and we'll unmute you. Kelsey Stoles. Madison, do you know how to get this to work a little bit easier?
Oh,
While we're waiting
Sorry.
on Michelle, there are a couple people that are in the chat that wasn't quite sure on how to know what their group number was if they didn't write it down. I don't know if that's something Shelly can take a look at and help us out with that.
Okay, Michelle, I'm in here. This is Madison. What can I do to help?
I think Kelsey Stoles is group 2 who needs to be able to share out. She needs to unmute.
Okay.
Are you able to unmute her?
Can you make me, no, I have no permissions because I gave host away.
Okay, I found Kelsey. Okay. That's going to be difficult.
So
Great.
if
Okay.
you guys would go ahead, if you were the representative for your group, go ahead and put your name of your group, which it looks like we're already doing. If you're unsure what your group was, just go ahead and make a comment, unsure, and then we'll go ahead and let Shelly look at the groups she made. And we can just choose a person from them. Does that sound good?
Okay, Kelsey, go for it.
Great. Group 2, we said overall, I think we can agree that it was really sad to see, especially really young children, when they pointed to the dolls with bad and good, they associated the darker doll as bad. And then when they asked which doll looked like them, a lot of the children pointed to the doll with darker color skin, and they said it was bad too. And so there is also a good point by one of our group members that similar to that implicit bias with students and people we serve who, if they hear the term dropout or, you know, adults going back to school, what impression that people have when it might just be a barrier. So just kind of, you know, being cognizant and aware of a lot of the implicit biases that we saw in the video, but then outside that we see in our day-to-day work as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Kelsey. What I'm going to go ahead and do, because that will be impossible for me to go through and find everyone with the screen share up, is I'm going to unmute everyone. Please go ahead and mute yourselves. And then if you are the leader, you can unmute yourself. So everyone is now unmuted and you can go ahead and mute yourself. And then the leader, group 4 leader, you can go ahead and share out, which is Mary, I think.
Okay, I think there were only 2 of us in the group, so we chatted a bit. We both had the exact same word to express how we reacted to the video. The word was sad. I've actually used a couple videos, but they were from the United States in my classes before about the doll test. But we ended up talking about other things related, like the previous person. We talked about just the word black and the word white and the images, the connotations they have, blacklisted, blackballed. White is supposed to be pure, but the other member of my group even mentioned thinking about jelly beans and how the black ones are the ones that nobody wants to eat. But yeah, I think we had the same reaction. It was, it's just depressing that in 2020 we even have to have this conversation.
Thank you. Okay, group 6.
Is that my group? Probably.
Go for it.
Molly.
Our group, okay, Molly. All right.
Yep.
I'm going to go ahead and say what my group said, and then can we do group 6? I'm sorry. We talked a little bit about how we thought it was a little bit surprising that children would have these biases when we all like to say that children are colorblind. And then, of course, we were all very sad. And we thought that maybe there was more going on than just implicit bias. All right, and then, all right, I'm done.
I agree with you. There's definitely, and I think that's why they made the doll video, because of what discrimination and marginalization has on the children. Okay. The next group, shoot, I don't even remember what group you were. Are we in group 8? I think so, yep.
I think they were saying it was Molly going to go because I think Molly was supposed to be number 6.
Yep.
Oh, Molly needs to be unmuted. Michelle, can you unmute Molly? I can't unmute her.
I will try to find her.
Sorry. We love
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay, okay, can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
We agreed that it was sad. We knew everybody would hopefully say it was sad. I think the saddest part for me is I work in the YLCC, so I get to see a lot of different colored children and different races. And I've noticed that a lot of the children that I have seen are white. So it makes me sad to see some of the Black children kind of feel like they're different than everybody else. And they have said that to me before, how they don't feel like they belong in there because they are different. And so it really came out to me like that. It was sad.
Thank you. And the group 10. Shelley, do we have a name of who needs to unmute?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Amanda, I sent it to you in the chat, Amanda.
Oh, she went already.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, that was 10. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think, anybody else from a group that did not share want to share a few words before we move on?
Did Lakia go? She's in group 8. I can see her talking.
Hey, look.
Hey, I was like, over here.
Sorry, I can only, it's the screen share. I could maybe unshare. Let me
It's okay. You're good.
All right. All right.
Okay. So we echo probably everything. Sad, bad. I think the one thing that was said out of ours was that our some of our team members felt like the way the questions were posed forced the children to make a decision, and that they didn't really like the fact that it forced the kids to make a decision, and they had to make a decision about who was bad and who was good. Someone else talked about how they felt like they were taught that that we're all part of the human race, and that it was just sad to see that the kids would have to pick a negative term that associated with themselves. I think one of the things that resonated most with me was that I think it's easy to see sympathy and empathy from children making these decisions about themselves and associating themselves with this, but it's not as easy to see it with adults, and that adults still feel this way that are of color. And the young boy who started off to identify himself as good, the first thought I had was like, where did he learn that from, and who taught him that, and when did he get it? Because I don't think that's something that everyone is taught and everyone receives, and that everyone doesn't understand that it doesn't go away just because you turn into an adult. So that's where we were with our conversation. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for bearing with us through the technical difficulties, but great conversation. And I hope you guys had, even better conversation in your small groups. So we're gonna go ahead and move on to question 2 with the limited time that we have. Identify ways that your implicit bias might be impacting your students and your school as a whole. So Shelley, if you wanna send them on out. We can do the whole time, and then what we'll do is, instead of sharing out, we'll put it in the chat when we get back, and this is all being recorded and the chat is being transcribed. So.
Okay, Cindy, 1 second. Hang on, I see you need a group. Just give me 1 second. Okay, you should get it now.
And then what about Molly and Candace?
Molly and Candace are both assigned, but they have not joined. So maybe they stepped away from their computer or something.
Okay. You guys see that okay?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
All right, 20 seconds, they should be back.
Yeah, Madison, will you let me know when they're back?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I don't know what group we were in then.
8.
Oh, okay. So 8.
Okay, Michelle, they are all coming back in.
Awesome. Okay, so we hope you guys just had a fruitful conversation. For the sake of time, unfortunately, we are not going to be able to do the outspoken share out, but what we would like everyone to do, and it doesn't even have to be just the groups that we are, 1 through 9, but any group or anybody, if you have anything to share, please put it in the chat. Like I said before, this video is being recorded and the chat is being transcribed. So we would love to hear, what you guys are learning or anything that you guys wanted to share with the group. Just put it in the chat and we'll get to that. So we've got a couple minutes left. So we are going to move on, Robin, to your next slide.
Okay, so we're going to address barriers to implicit bias because we know that it's important to learn. In order for us to unlearn implicit bias, we have to address the barriers to having these authentic, life-changing discussions about it. So some think of talk of implicit bias as just another instance of progressives seeing injustice under every bush, while others think implicit bias diverts attention from more damaging instances of explicit bigotry. Another reason people dismiss the notion of implicit bias is related to how uncomfortable people are with admitting what they have said or done is not nice, right? Accepting the fact of implicit bias will be less difficult if you learn about several other kinds of biases that are generated by the human brain. And some of those are conformity bias, self-serving bias, and the overconfidence bias. Removing implicit bias starts with reflection, introspection, and us being honest with ourselves and others. It requires a great deal of vulnerability, courage, and humility. When we put the mirror up to ourselves and we don't like what we see, we sometimes lie to ourselves to avoid the hurtful truth. And when we do that, we're doing an injustice to ourselves and those we unintentionally inflict harm on. There are countless examples of implicit bias resulting in discrimination against people of color, both in and out of our schools. Addressing bias is crucial in ensuring that all students feel safe and welcome at the Excel Centers. So let's look at some strategies to unlearn implicit bias. Next slide. Self-awareness is pivotal in this work. Recognizing your implicit bias is the first step. You also must grow in your understanding by researching more about the nature of bias. It will be important to increase and create opportunities for positive contact with individuals from groups which you have a bias, to learn from them and unlearn negative stereotypes about them. Make it a priority to recognize the propaganda that contributes to implicit biases, for example, in TV shows, movies, etc., and commit to educating yourself with media that reflects the truth about marginalized groups of people. And you can do that, learn a lot of information through documentaries and books. Identify ways that implicit bias may have impacted your interactions with students in the past, and work consciously on changing your biases. If you do recognize that your response to a person might be rooted in biases, make an effort to identify and consciously adjust your response, and definitely apologize and try to make amends if it's necessary. Michelle will cover our next steps.
Yep, so the first thing we want you guys to do, sorry we're having to kind of rush through the end of this, is pick one strategy to unlearn implicit bias and commit to working on it, and then share that with the whole group, kind of to hold yourselves accountable by typing it into the chat box. Like I said, we'll all be able to see the transcription later. And we realize that we have to do this work every day, all day, because you can see from the children and all of ourselves that socialization, media, TV, all of that stuff comes at us nonstop. And then be intentional about dismantling your implicit bias. So I'm not sure who all we have on our, we admit someone on the call, or the Zoom, but if you're not the leader, make sure you get with your leader of your school to talk about this, to advocate with your leaders, to develop strategies to combat biases and develop training for all staff to address implicit bias and systemic racism. And then we just wanted to leave you guys with a few of these resources here that we came across just as we were putting this together. There are a lot of other really awesome videos. And then we sent you the Jerry King video ahead of time. And then if you have any questions, comments, anything you guys want to talk about, Robin and myself, our email addresses are located there at the bottom. And that is it. And we hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day. Yes.
So I was just gonna say, would you put go back a couple slides? There was a request just to see the unlearning practices.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Michelle, would you like me to wait and allow people to type those in before we close the room?
Yes,
Okay.
please. And I'm sure they will be sharing this out with everyone as well with the recording.
So as we're getting ready to close Zoom room 9, please go ahead and utilize one of these strategies and make a note of which one you choose to implement over in the chat. And then feel free to exit and I will close the meeting. Thanks, ladies. You guys did an excellent job.
Thank you so much. This is really powerful.
Thank you. I will also put our email addresses in the chat just for your guys' reference for later. Perfect. And then when you guys are done with the chat, if you could just exit the room, that way we know people are done entering their comments and Madison can have her room back.
Oh, did you want to talk to me? That's why I can't get out.
You can't leave?
You can't get out.
I can't get out. It said
You're stuck
unmute.
with us.
It was like unmute now, and I was like, "Did you guys want to talk to me?" So I can't get out.
Well, I saw you trying to talk, so that's why I was like, let me try to unmute her. But
You want me to remove you?
Okay.
Aww. Bye, Lakia.
Thank you, Madison.
Bye-bye.
What about Deborah and Melissa?
They're the last one, and Carolyn.
And Carolyn.
Bye. I'm trying to get out.
Are you
We
guys
locked
all
some people
done?
in our room for some reason.
If you guys are all done with your comments, just let me know and then I can just close this out. I just want to make sure everybody got a chance to write what they needed to write in the comment box.
Don't leave.
Deborah, are you ready to leave? Okay, she's good.
Gosh, like after I'm looking at two people with a mask on, I'm like, oh yeah, someone came
Okay,
in my room.
I think we're good.
Okay,
All
I
right.
think we're good to go. Okay.
Madison, thank you so much. Robin, good job. Shelley, thank you.
Great job, ladies.
Thank you. Great job.